Welcome to today's edition of Tech Tuesday by Full Sail University. Today's discussion, invisible tech jobs, the technology jobs that people don't see. I am Luis Garcia, Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Full Sail University. We have a great panel today and of university graduates. First, we have Ms. Sheena Fowler, Vice President of Innovation of the Orlando Economic Partnership and a 2017 Full Sail University Hall of Famer. She has quite a great amount of credits to her name, and in both film and technology, movies like Tomorrowland and Transformers, but also in technology and innovation, bringing the Revolution Rise of the Rest a tour to Orlando, and somebody that I get to work with a lot. So that's Sheena. And then we have Mr. Rob Zienert, Senior Software Engineer at Netflix, and a graduate of Full Sail from 2007, I believe, from 2 degree programs. We'll talk about that. And he does a lot of interesting things in technology. I don't know that I can pronounce all of them, but I'm really interested to know more about Spinnaker. And I hope I'm actually pronouncing that correctly. And he also was a video game developer, and he creates Seller HQ, which is really, really cool. And our third panelist is Ashley Bennett, a technical program manager for Facebook and a graduate of Full Sail University from 2006. He spent a very long time at EA Sports in the gaming industry, and now with Facebook, a lot of very interesting projects. So now I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves. Love to start with you, Sheena. What are you up to these days?
What am I not up to these days? I think it's been an extraordinary opportunity to be at an organization that works on community and economic development, because we have had the opportunity to work with a variety of companies through everything that's been happening with COVID-19, everything that we've seen come through as a priority for Black Lives Matter and diversity initiatives, and really dig into issues that we were working on well before all of the panic struck. So it's exciting to be able to help participate in bringing our community together and figuring out how we recover collectively. That's something Orlando does extraordinarily well. We have been challenged before, and what we've seen is that the community steps up and the individual companies step up, specifically when it comes to innovation. So I recently founded the Orlando Tech Council, and seeing the amount of work that we're able to do, and Luis, everything that you've brought to the table has been phenomenal on, whether it's companies pivoting to support COVID-19 research or innovative ways in which we transition our companies to be more digitally friendly. It's a great time for innovation in tech. So we just have to get everybody else on the same page, and we'll figure out how to recover quickly.
Yeah. Thank you, Sheena. As I said, I get to work a lot with her in the helping the Orlando technology ecosystem evolve. And we're going to continue with Robert from Netflix. Rob, what are you up to these days?
Well, I primarily work on an open source continuous delivery platform called Spinnaker. It's the software that Netflix and a variety of other companies use to deploy all of our software. So anything that you use to interact with Netflix, we are the ones that facilitate deploying out that software as quickly and safely as possible around the world. And as part of working on Spinnaker, I also am part of the technical oversight committee for the open source project.
Great. And I think that Ashley made it. I'm so excited to have you, Ashley, and congratulations. I believe you're a new dad. And so thank you for joining us. And why don't you give us a little sense of what you're working on these days? I know that you're at home, but right before you went into paternity leave, what were you up to? I believe you're muted right now.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, a couple minutes late there. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'm at Facebook at the moment. Done a few different things over the years, but right now I'm working in privacy and specifically working on technologies that can ensure that user privacy is constantly respected. We're always testing all of our software in ways that we wouldn't expect it to necessarily fail, making sure we always allow the users to have the right choices, and whatever settings they set, we make sure we honor those throughout the entire pipeline. And so if you do one thing in one app, is it going to flow through, say Instagram, is it going to flow through to some other app, say Facebook, and things like that. So just trying to think, how can things be broken and make sure that doesn't happen, essentially.
I'm sure to keep you really busy, and so thank you for everyone and for your introductions. We're going to go over questions for the next 30 minutes, and questions that are already prepared. And for you out there in the audience of Facebook, welcome. Feel free to write your questions in the comments section. Our team will grab those questions and pass it on to me, and in the second half of the session today, we'll address your questions. So let's dive right in. I always like to talk about the love for technology because I think it starts there. So my love for technology started very early in life. When I was about 8 years old, my dad offered to buy us a computer, and we thought of it maybe kind of like another video game. And this is the early 80s, so not a lot of video games back then. And we said, why not? And so we got a computer for Christmas when I was 8 years old in like 1980. And but when we bought it, the store also offered a course for programming. It was a 1-week course every afternoon to learn how to program in BASIC, and I've been behind the computer ever since. So when it was time to make a decision for careers, it was very easy for me. But for you in the panel, and I'll start with you, Rob. When was that moment in which you fell in love with technology?
Oh boy. So my mom was a programmer, and also my dad is quite the geek as well. So basically, as far back as I can remember, we had computers, just stacks and stacks of computers in my house, and my dad would give me this box of broken electronics, and I would just kind of stick things together. And one time he gave me a broken voice recorder for the phone, and I took it all apart, snipped a bunch of wires inside, and then found out, like, after I'd done all that damage, that it was just like a burnt out fuse. And I was like, hey Dad, I found the problem, but I broke all of it. So I don't know, it's just been a constant thing for me. Even so far as like discovering multiple times over that you don't stick wires in electrical sockets. So I've just been very fascinated with everything technology for as far back as I can remember.
Thank you, Rob. I imagine you learned that the hard way. And
yeah, I did. I did.
How about you, Sheena? When did you fall in love with technology?
So my background is in film, and interestingly enough, that was my entrance to tech. My father is a mixed media artist, and he kind of got to a point while I was still in high school where he felt he had mastered Photoshop and wanted to just challenge himself with something new. So he picked up Avid and took on the challenge of teaching himself how to edit on that system. And it was perfect timing for me and where I was at, being, still in home in high school. So I learned side by side with my dad how to do it. And for me, it was this perfect intersection of my love and passion for storytelling and filmmaking with being able to manipulate it with technology. How do you organize it? How do you streamline everything? And I geeked out on the side of it to make sure that we had all of the parts and pieces together in the right place so that we could move quickly. And that really has been a march of my career. It's been, how do we find this intersection of utilizing technology to do something so that we are able to maximize impact.
Thank you, Sheena. How about you, Ashley? I believe you're not from the U.S., so if you can also go a little bit on that background and where you're from, and when did you fall in love with technology?
Yeah, so I'm from England, near London. I didn't come from a particularly technical family. My dad owned his own business, plumbing wholesaler. So it didn't come from that, but I had to kind of beg for my first computer when I was in school at I guess around 96, something like that. And then that was around the time that the internet was becoming a thing in England. So, I had to then beg, can we start getting this internet thing and justify that, and got that. So it wasn't long after that, I was like, okay, so there's these websites. So how do you make those? How do other people make these things? So I just started to teach myself using Notepad and just typing out the HTML and just doing things that way. And things like GeoCities and AngelFire and things like that some people might remember. Like trying to free host stuff on that. And then that lends itself to, okay, now how do you make images? So you learn a little bit of Photoshop, and you just learn a little bit more and more and more. Then Flash came along and other things came along. But I was always a gamer before that. So I've then thought, well, hang on, how do those things get produced? So I started to want to learn gaming. Long story short, I leased a Full Sail. That's where I came to do a game development degree. And it kind of went from there.
Thank you, Ashley. So let's go into our topic today about invisible tech jobs. I'll share with you a short story about how we came in with this idea. And as I was telling you before we started the panel today, I normally, under normal circumstances, I travel quite a bit to visit companies and engage with graduates in companies in the US and around the world. And late last year, I was visiting Riot Games in Los Angeles. And at that time, I got to sit down with a director of technical recruiting. Sometimes it's always great to sit with the chart to see what kind of candidates they're hiring, so make sure that our university is providing them what they need. And we were discussing different positions, and he was telling me about this one position whose job was to make sure the network had no latency. And he was sort of complaining that they just lost this candidate, I believe, to Netflix. And he said that those people are very coveted in AWS and in Netflix and all that. And his job was to make sure there was no latency in the network. And he lost it after they have doubled his salary, and Netflix offered them even more money to go move over there. And I thought about it. Wow! First of all, I was very surprised by it because of the competitiveness of it. But at the same time, not surprised because somebody's job has to be to make sure there's no latency in the network, especially for a game like League of Legends, which you have millions of concurrent users sending playing at the same time. Is imperative for the game to have no latency in the network. But it's a job that I never knew about, and it came to this idea that there's all these technology jobs that most people don't know about that are incredibly important, and that's why we came up with this idea of invisible tech jobs. So I want to ask you, and I'll start with Sheena because she travels a lot too, and talks to a lot of companies, and I'm sure she gets surprised every day about things that she didn't know about technology. But in your experience, have you learned about a technology job that you didn't know existed, and what was it?
Yeah, so I think when you shared this opportunity with me, I had a lot of thoughts around it. And where I come in, I think that I never thought I could have a career in technology. I'm not a gamer. I don't geek out on code. I don't. That's not my background. But I found myself being a valuable partner to the industry because I'm good at listening and translating what the technology is seeking to accomplish, how we can implement that, and how we bring in multiple partners to accelerate it. And so it was interesting to see that there is this whole industry of people that are necessary to translate all of the experts that are very technically trained and brilliant. And when you meet that balance between the coder and the techie and the person who can understand what they're saying at their level, and then make it so that everybody else in the world can understand, that's a valuable position. And you need each other really to execute on just about everything, whether we're talking about launching rockets or creating a new game or a VR experience. So I think, to me, that's been the most interesting thing, is that you don't have to be a coder or a gamer to think you can have a career in technology. There's a lot of opportunity for people like me that know how to partner and listen and elevate it to the next level.
Thank you, Sheena. Absolutely. I always thought that the reason why I was successful in technology is because I could relate to people. And my first job out of being a programmer was to be a producer, because I could translate what the programmer said to the rest of the company. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. I go with you, Ashley. In your experience, have you learned of a technology job that you didn't know existed?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Sheena's saying, I think it works the other way around too. That sometimes you give an engineer a problem and they can go off in a tangent and like, oh, they're going to really solve it to some really complex level. It's like, that's actually not what you needed to do. Like, it was much simpler than that, or that's not going to actually get us the real essence of what we needed. So it works the other way around too, translating from what the customer, if you like, wants into the thing that we should build, and then you go figure out how to do that thing. So it works in both directions, I think. But so I was at EA for a long, long time, and obviously did the game development at Full Sail. So there you work in small teams, and you realize, you have to put some assets together, some art, some models, some code, and you throw it all together, that's it. But then when you work on a big AAA game with these big companies, suddenly there's hundreds of people, because it's not just the coders, it's not just the artists, and then designers and everything else, producers, development directors, to get the team all working together. But then there's legal and marketing and the website people and the mobile app people and all this other peripheral stuff that goes with it. It all requires its own expertise. And yeah, having those people, again, to Sheena's point, that can translate between all those, which are the producers, development directors, TPM, technical program manager, that's me. Those kind of jobs are super important. So that's the kind of niche that I fell into, is being in between, so I can touch on all different elements. Like, this keeps it exciting to me. I'm not like stuck in one silo. I can see across different domains and help connect the dots, essentially. That's the part that I enjoy.
Thank you, Ashley. That's great. I imagine in your job you gotten really good at that precisely. And allows you to go from gaming into Facebook, with different industries and yet
yeah, transferable skills. Yeah, exactly.
How about you, Rob? Is that a job that in technology you didn't know existed? What was it?
Well, basically all of them, really. When I first started getting into programming, I was thinking like, oh yeah, so there's the people that write the HTML, and then there's like just magic that happens on the back end. So since I'm primarily self-taught when it comes to programming, it's been I had a series of years where there were a bunch of like, of course there's someone that's doing that thing. And to kind of go back to your point on the guy that was going to go to Riot but then came to Netflix, I'm part of this organization called Platform Engineering. It's a central team that all the other engineers in the company are our customers. And as one of our sister teams is Cloud Network Engineering, at this team that this person went to, I would imagine. And it's no secret that Netflix runs all of our software on AWS, but we still have this Cloud Network Engineering team, which when I first joined Netflix, I was like, that's weird. AWS is supposed to be handling all the network for you. And that's like a solved thing in the cloud. Well, not at like a Netflix scale. It's not enough to just have what is offered by Amazon. We need to have better insight. We need to actually know how things are going through all of our different data centers. And so there's this team that's building more insight and more tooling for the rest of the engineering teams at Netflix to understand how are the packets flowing across the world and what are the actual bottlenecks that are kind of opaque because we're living in a cloud-based world. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me to sit down with them every now and then and hear about the challenges that we have on what should be or is totally managed network experience.
Pretty
Maybe I
amazing.
can just build on that real quick. So
Go ahead.
when I first joined Facebook, I was lucky enough to go to a big summit where they brought a lot of the infrastructure team together. And I just got completely blown away by some of the numbers they were showing us of, this is the amount of users we have at any one time. This is the amount of data centers that we have, but we need to like double that in the next X amount of time. And these numbers were just ridiculously huge. And I thought I'd come from like some big products with like Battlefield, Need for Speed, things like that, that we had to build service for those and we try and build the right capacity. But then I would see this and it was just ridiculous. And so there's this whole chain of people that you don't, like you said, don't even think about. Like that team at AWS needs to exist, but other companies need to have something similar as well. Someone needs to put that data, like that computer in a rack in a data center somewhere. Someone has to build that building to put that rack in the first place. Someone needs to lay the cable underground between those. Like it just gets ridiculous. So there's so many jobs that you don't necessarily think about, like construction and all kinds of things.
Scale definitely is something that brings a whole nother set of problems that have to be solved for a whole nother set of people. Many years ago, I was in a conference and there was presenting the product manager of Internet Explorer, which back then was a very large browser. And he was talking about the challenges is that a lot of people give us a lot of heat because we don't innovate enough in Internet Explorer. But the problem is that our user base is so big that if we modify a button and we put it in the wrong place, we break the internet. And because for people that window right there, that's the internet. And it really brought it to perspective. Yeah, I mean they changed the color of a button and all of a sudden people think that the internet broke. So yes, scale definitely has something to do with it. We've been doing several of these events for the past couple of months, and time after time, folks, when I ask the question about technologies that are exciting for today and the future, artificial intelligence comes up every single time. And so I've been working more to get the opinions of folks of artificial intelligence, and would like to get it from you and your perspective. What interesting jobs exist today because of artificial intelligence, and how important is it for technology jobs right now? And I see all of you guys looking up, so I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to marinate that one. But there are new jobs because of artificial intelligence. Somebody's job is to make sure that engine works well, or to train it, or whatever it is. And so who wants to answer that question first? Sheena?
I think, Orlando sits in this very unique position as being one of the most visited destinations in the world. And you come across a moment in time like we're experiencing where our industry has not seen this type of disruption, where things halted and they've never been closed this long. And there is a lot to say of what AI is capable of helping these businesses understand how to recover. And it's been extraordinary to sit in some of these conversations to say, okay, well, now that we have a pause, and we're not dealing with the millions of people coming through, how are we going to level up the experience? And I think that's something that's totally, I'm not wildly surprised, but it's the spoke that blows my mind, is that it's all connected. And so an experience of somebody in a ticketed line is almost the same as something we're seeing in an airport. And so experience technology and the way that AI is participating to shape the way that we are going to experience different things in the world, whether they're virtual or whether they're in person, is really quite impressive. And then I started to get involved with autonomous vehicles, and it was almost the exact same thing. And the fact that AI really takes all of these different industries that you think are different and pulls all the commonalities out of them, I think that's really a beautiful thing to see, how the more that we get companies to partner and participate with each other to solve big issues for communities, we're going to see they're not that different. just the export of what they do is different. But when you get into the terms of AI, all of those data pieces, there's a lot of similarity between different industries.
That's great. Thank you, Sheena. Autonomous cars, super exciting. Rob, what, in your experience, what interesting jobs in technology exist today because of AI, and how important is the AI right now?
So I would say that AI is still very much an emerging area. So I think a lot of the jobs that are around AI is more of an exploratory, what can we do with AI and machine learning, and it's still kind of nebulous where all of this is going to go. But one of the things that got presented to the Netflix engineering group, I imagine I can talk about this, is we use machine learning and AI to automatically choose the images in the when you're scrolling through the Netflix list of movies, all those images for the different titles are A/B tested across all the different users, and we figure out, okay, what is the title image that's going to draw the most attention and get the most clicks. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of work. If we've got 20 different images that are being created for every single movie that we have, that's a ton of time. And it's not actually a person that's doing this. We've written code to automatically scan through all of the frames of our movies and use facial recognition to find the right frame where a person isn't like mid-speech, where their mouth is open in kind of a strange way, and it just automatically will choose these various images that then become candidates for people to go through and then select, okay, this is good, this is not good, and then that is a feedback loop into the system so that it becomes more and more effective and more efficient to choose all these different images over time, which I thought that was a really neat application. It's not a self-driving car by any means, but it's a massive productivity saver, which is a direct influence on how profitable the company is.
Yeah, I always wonder about that. And as of this day, we're all watching a lot of Netflix. And I noticed that the different images that come from the same movie, sometimes I just like, I haven't seen that one. And your mind goes immediately, so I wonder how they're solving that problem. As many platforms, you want to keep people inside as much as possible, which is something that Facebook does really well. And so I go to Ashley. In your experience, what interesting tech jobs exist because of AI, and why is AI important for technology?
Yeah, I think it is important. I think the overall goal is to try and make things easier for people and do things better than people can. So we can have computers doing some of the things that humans have to do today that can be difficult, time-consuming, things like that. So that we can have the computers doing those, and we can go focus on these other challenges. So if you go into like medicine, for instance, perhaps a computer can scan mammograms and detect cancer much better than humans can. So okay, let them do that and detect it better, and we can save more lives that way, right? And then meanwhile, the doctors can go focus on something else rather than spending their time looking at these images. So I think that's why it's important for things like that to improve everyone's life. In terms of the jobs that kind of exist today, I think it's around the research stuff of what is the best way to train a machine to do something, like how do we build neural networks and things like that, and there are other approaches. But in reality, what I've seen, a lot of the work is gathering data and gathering the right data that you actually need to train to do the thing that you're trying to achieve. So when I joined Facebook, it was to work on Spark AR, which is an AR platform that's integrated into all of the apps, so anyone can download the tools, build their own AR effects, and launch them in Instagram, Facebook, that kind of thing. But to make those effects work, so for instance, putting things on your face, you need to be able to detect the face, and where are the eyes, where are the mouth, and is it open, closed, that kind of thing. So you can collect a whole bunch of photos of faces, that's not it. You now have to label, this is where the eye is on this photo, this is where the mouth is, it's open, and you have to grade everything. So you have to collect all the images, then you have to like annotate everything, then you have to run it through some algorithm to make it learn the thing you're trying to learn, then you have to test it, is it doing a good enough job on it or not. And so a lot of the work is around data gathering, labeling, and then learning from that.
And if I could piggyback on that for a second, I think you nailed it, Ashley, is the ability for AI to empower humans to make smarter decisions is really exciting, because I think there's so much commentary about how it's replacing. And the more that, I don't know, maybe it's just being a parent, but I only have so much capacity, right, to make decisions. And if I can use something like AI to get me that much further to where I can focus on what I need to, because I've trained it in the right way and I found the right data points in the right way, that then makes us that much more efficient. So I hope that we're getting to that tipping point where it's not a fear that AI is going to take over everything, that it's AI layered with the human expertise and context that is really where we're going to see an explosion of that technology.
That's great. We're getting just about the half mark, so I have a few questions that are starting to come in from the audience, and I want to remind the rest of the people out there that you can send your questions in the comments. And but before I get started with that, I also want to ask you a question about new jobs. And so in our organization, our university, we're about 2,200 employees. And we serve 16, 17,000 students, which means that many of the roles that you see in the industry, we also have, and sometimes we get to see trends because they are our own needs. So an example of that is the people that did reports. So many years ago, we need somebody to kind of get this data and analyze it and create some graphics so we can make some decisions. And so you need a person that could do queries, and we call that an analyst. And as we started migrating systems, legacy systems, into cloud systems, and these systems track a lot more data, then everybody in their own department, well, I need an analyst too, and because I need now I have access to this other thing I never had access before. And then that got even more complicated. Our data started being available exponentially, and now the analysts, it'll be great if they know math, it'll be great if they know stats, and then now it'll be great if they can program, it'll be great if they know artificial intelligence, and so now what it used to be an analyst is something much more complicated that people are calling data scientists. So I want to ask you about those examples of jobs that you see in small demand right now, but you can see that it will turn into something of great demand into the future. Let's say, Sheena, you can, we'll start with you.
I've been fascinated to see how many industries have caught on to the concept of gamifying their staff and workflow. And we do a lot of game jams here in Orlando, and I think that's what really brought me into that concept that, how does the medical industry gamify some of the work that they do? And watching these, doctors and folks that have worked in the medical industry their entire life now engage with leaders in the game dev industry and see how it makes them that much more productive. We're starting to see that come in as a job of somebody who knows, is not an industry expert for, let's say it's a hospital system, but is a game dev expert who can come in and help gamify some of the processes that they have in the system to make, maybe a little bit more fun, add a little competitive edge to everything that you have to get through. And because at the end of the day, a spoonful of sugar really does work. And that's what we're seeing, that gamification of processes is starting to catch on.
Gamifying processes, new job. Probably something Ashley could do. So Ashley, how about you? Is there a job that you see right now that is needed in small quantities, but you can see that growing into high demand?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I mean, if I were to guess, I feel like some of the higher tech companies try and push the envelope more, and that solves problems and can provide tools that make things easier for everybody else. And that can then, if you like, trickle down to other companies. And I think like if I needed to do some paperwork the other day because I just had a new baby. I had to send a fax, right, to a government agency so I can get a birth certificate or something like that. Like a fax machine, are you serious? And I had to go do that. Like I still think there's a lot of like legacy in the world that needs to be replaced. So I think that there's like, if you want to call it normal jobs that we would consider within the tech industry that just haven't filtered down into the rest of the world, into other industries. And this is all within the US still, right? It's not like I'm saying this is some less developed country that's having this problem. No, it's like in the US. So that's what I think. I think like some of the skills that have been learned and utilized more effectively, if you like, at the tip of the spear, can filter down and out into other industries and help solve problems, whether it's growing food and like optimizing the using AI to optimize like farms work, or running a government agency, whatever it might be, improving the way IDs work or something. I think all those things can happen.
That's true. A lot of problems that needs to be solved out there. How about you, Rob? Is that a job that you know that is right now small quantities that you can see it grow into something bigger?
It's a hard question. I'm gonna just keep driving on the platform side of things in like the cloud world, because that's kind of my expertise. One of the things that I've seen, and to Ashley's point, these larger tech companies create things, offer them out as open source software for everybody else to use, smaller companies. And one of the largest ones to date right now is Kubernetes. Google had a cloud orchestrator called Borg, and then it made basically Google cloud infrastructure for everybody through Kubernetes. And this was a very alluring kind of technology that came about that everyone wanted to use, put kind of pointedly, primarily because Google created it and everyone wants to have like the great engineering culture of Google, but for their own. And a lot of people jumped on the Kubernetes as like a thing that everyone should know. And so now all these developers now have to not only know their domain, but also become infrastructure engineers, which is a whole lot of cognitive overhead for people to actually be doing, when really they should just be solving the problem in front of them, rather than like, okay, I need to build this Kubernetes cluster and then layer on a bunch of custom CRDs and yada, yada, yada to make my simple website work. So now that there's this leveled up layer of infrastructure, the industry is kind of like starting to take a step back and go, oh, you know what? Maybe having tens of thousands of microservices and all this infrastructure code that everyone needs to understand is maybe not the right thing. So there's now starting to become a layer of engineer that is saying, hey, we will take on the knowledge of all this complexity that has been introduced into the cloud compute world, and offer that up as a product for engineers to use. So at Netflix, we've been working quite diligently on productizing this infrastructure so that people don't need to know how their code is being deployed. All they need to care about is, hey, is it building? Is it testing? Does it work? And then we will figure out for you the right instance size, how much memory, CPU to give it, and at what times and when and how, even onto what compute platform, if it's Kubernetes or some other container system, or right onto VMs, how to deploy it, so that all that information that people don't really care about can just kind of disappear, and they can focus on the actual job that they were hired to do. So I think that that's going to be an ever more popular job in the future, is people that are just willing to work on the plumbing of the cloud rather than everyone having to take on that burden.
Well, that's quite interesting, and um, again to the problem of scalability, right? So by doing that architecture allows the product to be much more scalable.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really cool example. Thank you for sharing. So I have a question for the audience, and something that Ashley and I think all of you guys have mentioned, but we'll start with Ashley in terms of transferable skills. And technology is very vast. There's a lot to do, as you guys have said, and there are things that definitely allows you to move from one role into another, or from one part of the industry to another. So I just want to take some time and talk about those transferable skills. What are those things that allows you to go from a gaming company like EA, Ashley, into a social media company like Facebook? I'll start with Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends what role you are in, because I'm sure you can transfer a lot of skills in any given type of role. Like if you're in marketing, then I'm sure you can market one product, you can probably market another one. For legal, you understand, the frameworks you need to use in other places. So in whatever role you're in, you can probably do it. If you're a programmer as well. But if you need to have the desire to want to change, essentially. So I was in the games industry for a very long time. I've changed roles within EA over the years. I was there over 11 years and tried different things, but it got to a point where I needed to do something different. And that's where I thought AR and VR would be the next thing. And this is why I joined Facebook. And that was the tie-in, because it was still like real-time 3D and things like that. So I could still bring my experience from gaming now to this other company and take that approach. But then once I was here, I've changed again into this privacy role after a while, because now I know how this company functions and how to get things done and so on. And now I can use my technical knowledge to speak to the engineers, to translate what they're talking about. I can use my project program management skills to help negotiate between teams, get them to do things. So that's going to be true wherever you are. Those are the same skills that you can use anywhere. So that's how I've done it. But I think it's true for, like I said, most roles. You can probably do that as long as you've got that desire to learn and be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, I don't know anything about privacy, or I didn't at least a year ago, but I volunteered because I was willing to learn it and to drive it forward and to solve this real problem that I actually see. So that was the difference between me and the next person that wasn't willing to do that, that wanted to stay in the thing that they knew were comfortable doing.
That's great. I remember when I met you, you said, I just joined the privacy team and I volunteer for it. And at a time that's a really important topic inside Facebook, and I remember walking into the office and there was this group of this pod of seats with a big sign before that said privacy group. And I said, wow. And it's great that it came from engineers, right? Because you have to, the mind of the engineer is like, oh, well, I have all these, social security numbers over here, and I have these phone numbers over here. I can match it with the movies I watch, and that should be fun. And without realizing what that could do, right? And so there's a lot of education that has to happen, and I commend Facebook for actually putting a group like that together and allow people to volunteer to it. So Rob, how about you? What do you think are those transferable skills that people can have to go into different roles or even different types of industries inside tech?
I think that probably the most important skill, being able to program is kind of secondary, I think, even as a software engineer, to being able to write well and just generally communicate, especially in like a post-COVID remote working world. Your primary means of interacting with your coworkers, with your customers, is through text and through video calls. So being able to very well and tersely communicate your ideas and express your ideas and be able to take feedback from others is, bar none, the most important skill that you need to have to make it inside the tech industry or really anywhere. Being able to just interact with your coworkers who are all trying to get to the same end objective is by far the most important thing. And then I would say second to that is your, to Ashley's point, willingness to learn. There's nothing static inside of the tech world. You always need to be learning. Once you graduate, Full Sail or any other place, that's really just kind of the first step in your education. If you just graduate and you're like, oh, got my job, I'm all good and done, I don't need to do anything more, you'll find that your trajectory inside the tech community will be rather short. Most of the time that I've spent in the tech industry is really just learning something new, learning how to do the thing that I already knew how to do better. Being able to evolve yourself is invaluable.
Thank you. That's great insight, Rob. And Sheena, how about you? And you can see from a very interesting point of view, right? And you probably see it in your career, many people changing careers inside, including yourself. And as you say, you're not a tech person, and yet technology is a lot of what you do. So what do you think are those transferable skills that people need?
They really nailed it, right? It's that ability to problem solve, period, is something that you have to always be on top of. And that's an evolution of learning that you want to continue every single day. And communication, because if you can't problem solve and listen to all parties, be able to communicate the priority amongst all of those different details, you're going to get lost in a series of big crazy ideas that you'll chase and never actually execute on anything. And I found that the ability to do both is not something everybody possesses. So I didn't know that until I really got into the workforce, and I started to see that my ability to jump from the big picture down into the weeds and the details is something that people really can put to good use, because not everybody's able to jump between. And you need those people in the different learning abilities to collaborate to be able to really get a team that's dynamic enough to produce something that's interesting. But I've been watching teams, and especially through COVID, the ones that are a bit stuck, that think they know everything, are the ones that are getting left behind. And those that are open to new ideas and open to being creative and pivoting and problem solving are fine. They're figuring it out. They're opening new doors and creating new opportunity for them and their employees and their customers. And so I think those are communication and problem solving, the skills that you can transfer to anything.
One quick addition. I realized just now that if I were hearing myself, I would have felt a little bit disappointed or discouraged. When I first came out of college, like I was telling one of my graduate friends that I was doing this panel, and he started kind of making fun of me, like, oh, Rob is going to be doing some public speaking, and then it linked a GIF of this guy that's like sweating a lot. Being able to communicate well, it's a learned skill, and if you don't have it, that it's not a concern. It's something that you will be able to pick up over time, and you'll continually get better and better at. So if you don't have that skill, it's something that can be learned, and all it takes is just putting yourself out there. Being willing to jump without looking is a very positive quality, I think. And the only way that you can get better at communication is by doing it.
And is it Ashley that said embrace the awkward? Because that's, I mean, I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in, we all have to network. We all have to meet people and figure them out quickly and learn how to work with them. And I think something that a lot of folks, wherever they are in their career trajectory, if they still think that it's easy for everyone, they've missed it. It's just, some have accepted this is what you got to do. You got to step in, and sometimes it's weird and sometimes it's flawless, and you kind of take what you get and figure it out, and don't don't think too much about it, but it's just one of those things you have to do.
Thank you. That's fantastic advice. You're getting a lot of applauses in the comments, and we're turning towards the end of it, and there's a question that I always ask, and I learned a ton from. It's my favorite question to ask. Besides, how do you or when do you fall in love with technology? My second favorite question to ask is, what is the technology today that gets you excited about the future? And it's interesting enough, I get a lot of the same answers, but I keep asking it because everybody sees the future in a different way, and everybody gets excited about the future in a different way. I get excited by the fact that we are at a point where processing power is really high and very cheap, and technologies are incredibly advanced, that the technologies that you can combine that you couldn't combine before allows us to enter into an era where technology can be used to solve very, very complex and large problems for humanity, which is something that perhaps was not available in computational technology before, especially the last 10, 20 years has been more about, giving people information, connecting them, being able to do transactions and be able to occupy people's no busy time. And that's great and love that time, but I think we are at a time that we can solve very important question, and the world is not free of problems right now, as you all know. They're very, very large problems to be solved, and technology can play a very important role to all of them. So with that background, in your mind, what is a technology today that gets you excited about the future? I guess starting with you, Ashley.
I guess I'm kind of biased in that I think AR and VR are still very exciting, particularly the AR side of things. I saw it as something that was, decades away, but taking the job at Facebook made me realize it's much sooner than I thought. So we have this mission, if you like, within AR and VR of defy distance. So we want to bring people together, which is particularly appropriate today. If I can be, like I said, I'm from England, my family's all back there. So if I could be in the same room, or appear to be in the same room as the rest of my family, to talk to them, it's going to be better than we're doing it on a screen right now. This is good, but it'd be better if I could see them walking around the room and interact with them and see their body language and things like that. So that's what seems small, that could make a big difference to your relationships with different people. So I'm excited about that. And then the rest of the things AR can do as well, like presenting information to you just in time and helping educate people. I think some of the boundaries there we haven't even started to reach, because the product isn't here yet in everybody's hands for everyone to put their own thought into it. So what would a farmer want? What would a doctor want? What would a driver want? Everybody else. So I think there's a huge scope of what AR can be doing in a decade or more.
Thank you, Ashley. How about you, Rob? What is a technology today that gets you really excited about the future?
Well, I've got two. I'm going to cheat and say two. The first is, I always get really emotional whenever I watch like SpaceX launches. When they did the test of two booster rockets coming down and landing at the same time, my mind was just blown. I was like, oh, we live in the future. So that entire spacefaring and just making space more of a commodity for commercial use is really exciting to me. And the second one is a little more bland, I guess, which is kind of weird since it gets me excited, but productivity tooling like Zoom and Notion, these tools have, prior to COVID and this more remote working first mentality that the industry's been going in, it has been relatively neglected. Like we do have tools to satisfy all the different things that we need to do, but they're not necessarily all great. And I think that there's a lot of really exciting things that the industry can do that we just really haven't unlocked yet. So I'm really excited over the next couple years to see what ideas come up and what new products come out as a result of us all learning in a large scale how to do remote work.
Remote work. We were just talking about that before we got started, and it's great that you bring it up. Sheena, how about you? What do you see in technology today that gets you excited about the future?
I mean, I like Rob, it is fairly difficult to pick just one. I am a big fan of the capabilities of what all the realities, VR, AR, XR, all of them can bring to the table. But actually covering that, the other one that really excites me is smart city development. And I think, like productivity tools, maybe it's a little of a bland topic, doesn't get everybody excited. But when you think about the fact that our country and our communities are divided by disparity, and if we can leverage some of the technology that we have to be more inclusive and bring more people into the conversation and deliver them access to, educate themselves in new ways and find mentorships and friendships and commonality amongst things that we thought were totally different, that, we never realized how much a highway divides a community, how much a street can divide a community. And once we break that down, and in the virtual world, those don't exist. Your opinions are what matters. Your testimony is what matters. And I think the more that we can leverage technology to focus that and bring people together to get them places that they need to faster, or deliver access to different things faster and more efficiently, and in a smart way that saves a local government money so they can focus on the good stuff, that I think is the evolution. And maybe it's here on Earth, maybe it's in space, Rob, who knows? We know they'll be launching out of Cape Canaveral in Florida. So I think it's exciting to think about that we barely scratched the surface on that. There is a lot to go between 5G and populating other planets. And smart city development, I think, is at the core of all of that.
It is. It's super cool. The stuff that is in development right now that will use smart technology to make cities better, more efficient, people happier, more equity, more equality. It's super exciting. Well, I want to thank you, all three of you, for giving us this great time. Sheena, Rob, and Ashley. This was a very insightful conversation, and I learned a ton.